Ladies and gentlemen, the CyberFundamentals Framework. You probably heard already about it, but let's go a little bit more deeper in the CyberFundamentals Framework. The CyberFundamentals Framework, you see it there in the cloud. As a matter of fact, it's inspired by 4 frameworks standards. First and most of all, the NIST CSF version 1.1. ISO 27001, and of course, related to it, it's 27002. IEC 62443 and the SIS controls. Why those 4? Because those 4 are the most used in Belgium. Now, inspired by this, we made the CyberFundamentals Framework. The most important thing we had to think about was it should have been something which was manageable. Manageable by all kinds of entities, from the little entity, the butcher, the bakery, till the most complex entities, multinationals. That's also why you see those 4 levels: small, basic, important, and essential. We will go much more deeper in it later on, but first of all, a framework has no value when it's not validated. And what we did is we validated a framework against real-life attacks. And we have the advantage in the CCB that we also have the Federal Cyber Emergency Response Team under our wings, so we could use real-life incidents to check the framework. And the validation figures showed that when you apply basic, already 82% of the attacks are countered. When you apply important, 94% attacks are countered, and essential, all attacks were countered. Be sure those are the validation figures. Let's start with the small level. Now, level is not an assurance level. So it's something you can use, and it's also a set of guidelines. It's intended for micro-organizations where only a limited technical knowledge is required. And as a matter of fact, those are the best practices in cybersecurity and also information security. Important is that those guidelines are fully aligned with the assurance levels that come next. So everything that you do in this framework is something you can reuse afterwards. So you are really building up. It's incremental. Now, let's start to look at small. Now, small, like I said, are really the basics. One of the most important ones is use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. A very important one. Security updates and patches. Install them as soon as they are available. Implement an antivirus solution. Install a firewall. Use encryption where possible, especially when you are doing a remote access. Backups. A very important one, make backups. And be sure that those backups are also available offline, meaning that they are not connected with the network you are working on. Because if that network is going down, if this network is hacked, then you also lose your backup. Also make an extra backup when there are major changes. Now, important is that also you check those backups. Making a backup without checking it afterwards makes no sense. So you have to check every time, not every time, but as much as possible, if this backup is still valid. The moment that something goes wrong, you can reuse it. Make sure that no one works with administrator privileges for daily tasks. Restrict physical access. You have nothing to win that somebody you don't know enter your premises. Protect computers, protect mobile devices against theft or even improper use. And quite an important one in the end is make sure that the people know who to contact when there is a cyber incident. Now, when I talked about the assurance levels, so you have small, which is not an assurance level, but we have 3 assurance levels: basic, important, and essential. Those are coming, as a matter of fact, somewhat from the Cybersecurity Act. If you look at basic, important, and essential, if you see the definitions, these are nearly the same as basic, substantial, and high. As a matter of fact, basic is something standard, the standard security measures for all kinds of enterprises. The technology there is normally available for everyone and even free of charge. And that's something we use for known cybersecurity risks. When you go to the important level, then you have targeted cyber attacks by actors with common skills and resources, but it's already an evolution. And essential, of course, those are really the targeted advanced cyber attacks by actors with extensive skills and resources, and often they are state-sponsored. A very important question when we created CyberFundamentals was, is it proportional? We have the principle of balance incorporated in the CyberFundamentals framework. As a matter of fact, we use three ways to introduce balance, to introduce proportionality. First of all, you have proportionality because you have the three levels. You have an assurance level, basic, important, and essential. Next, we use the proportionality using key measures. I'm coming back on this later on, but as a matter of fact, using the key measures, we can really focus on the most essential things. And last but not least, proportionality is done using the maturity level. You will see afterwards that the CyberFundamentals framework uses maturity levels. Let's start with the first step. That's a business risk assessment. That's a risk assessment on the highest level. If you look at CyberFundamentals, one of the most important triggers in CyberFundamentals is risk assessment. Like every business you are running, you have to know your risks. You have to know how to mitigate your risks. And you have to know what risk you eventually accept. Now, on the highest level, the business risk assessment, we created a Cyphern selection tool for you. And that's something which is available on the internet, on our website. And here, the Cyphern selection tool was made in the context of NIS2, I know, but it gives you already a very good risk assessment on the highest level. And there we used our experience. There we used the different sources we have, also the security sources we have on state level. And that's why we made a template for you. And what you see on your screen when you open it, it is directly a standard assessment of a risk in a specific sector linked with, of course, the size of the company. Then you will have a certain level that comes out, but you can change that level afterwards when you reassess your risk. That depends really on the company you're in. Once you have the business risk assessment, so at the highest level, then you go really on the operational way. Then you are going to look at your different processes to see, okay, what are my risks there? So you are really going more deeper into the risks on cybersecurity and information security. And already, if you look on the CyberFundamentals framework, you will see that from the basic level on, you have a risk assessment integrated in the framework. Important is that the CyberFundamentals framework doesn't ask for a specific methodology to use. You can use whatever you choose. Except, of course, if you are in a sector where they ask to use a specific risk assessment. But we, as a CCB, will never ask you to use a specific methodology. Important to start with is the architecture. Now, the CyberFundamentals framework, if you look at it, and you can download it easily, it's all for free. If you look at it, you will very well see that it's really based upon NIST-CSF. That has a reason. NIST-CSF is a framework that is good. It's well worked out. It's used in a lot of countries. So we reused the functions. So you see there the 5 functions today. There is a next function coming on in the version 2.0. But you see exactly the same functions, you see exactly the same categories and exactly the same subcategories. And then you see the controls. Every control has a specific number, so you can easily track it afterwards. When you look a little bit further, you see that the level important is coming upon the basic level, meaning it's incremental. So when you are important, you have to follow the basic and important. Essential, basic, important, and essential. What you also see is that the key measures are very well visual. So we made them very clear. That are the key measures you have to adhere to. And last but not least, because we know that for every responsible in an entity, it's important to know, okay, but I did already so much for informational cybersecurity, I followed other standards, other frameworks, and now you're coming up with a new one. We made a mapping available online. So you can use the mapping, which is today in an Excel sheet. You can work with it, you can play with whatever you want, and it's available for you there. So you can directly make the link between the CyberFundamentals framework and the different frameworks and standards that CyberFundamentals used. Let's have a closer look. Now we take the response category, acting on a detected cybersecurity incident. And there you see exactly the same identifiers as are used in the NIST CSF. When we go a little bit further, we see at the basic level quite basic things. A basic response plan, a post-incident evaluation, info sharing with your employees. Going to important, you will see that the same things reappear, but now they are evolving. So your response plan is already developing. It's using the corrective actions. Investigation or received notifications is coming upon the basic level. Incident categorization, vulnerability management. Info sharing with employees is now evolved to relevant stakeholders. Coordinate your response actions with those stakeholders. Incident handling capability, post-incident evaluation, and which is coming more upon the basic is incident handling improvement. Then essential, of course, again, much more requirements, much more, it's not that much. But important is that in essential, you will see a lot of automation. You also see an extra here, forensics. So there we are going much more in detail, there we are going much more focusing on the higher risk that you expect on an essential level. As I told you, key measures. Now, key measures are quite crucial in the CyberFundamentals framework. Now, a risk assessment could come to the identification of a risk where you can say, okay, but that risk I accept, so I leave it out. Now, key measures are controls you never can leave out. You have to do them. And those key measures come directly from the real life incidents we are getting for the Federal Cyber Emergency Response Team. So you will see there, for example, and I give you an example. This is a summary. It's not exactly the same as in the framework, but I made a summary of 10 of them. And you will see there that MFA is also in it. That's a key measure. Because we know by experience that MFA is really a trouble. It's really an attack pattern we see every day. You see also that the number of key measures is limited. But every time, again, assurance level basic, important and essential, 13 in basic, 8 in important and 8 in essential, so 29 in total. But as I said, key measures are really the crucial element within the CyberFundamentals framework. CyberFundamentals, as I told you before, is maturity level based. Why? We don't believe in a Big Bang approach. Going from 0 to hero is really impossible. It asks a lot of resources. Resources on a financial way, resources way, people way. So we don't believe that it's possible to go really from nothing to the highest level that is available in the framework. So we reuse the idea of having maturity levels. So you can make an evolution, and that gives you also the opportunity to focus your budget on where you need it. Now, the cyber-fundamental maturity levels, as a matter of fact, are those in CMMI. So we didn't invent something new. This is exactly what is available in CMMI. I know this is not quite so easy to do an assessment afterwards because it's not something that is 1-0. No, it's really looking, evaluating where you are in a certain system on a certain moment. Now, maturity levels without having criteria is impossible. So we made also the criteria. The criteria are there available. So those are the criteria you have to follow. I know this might give some trouble to have an interpretation of what does it really mean. So what we did is we worked out for every key measure a complete set of how you have to understand those maturity levels for two things, documentation and implementation. As a matter of fact, when you do an assessment of this framework, you address it from a documentation standpoint and from an implementation standpoint, which is, as a matter of fact, the typical approach of an auditor. So you look if it is documented and you check if it is the documentation is implemented as you have written it. So this is directly linked with the different maturity levels. You see there on the screen, and as I said, to help you, we did some work for you. And this will also be completed afterwards with other cases than the key measures, but we try to make as much as possible information available to you to help you in this kind of assessment. Now, important in the CyberFundamentals framework is the CyberFundamentals self-assessment tool. As a matter of fact, this tool gives you the possibility to check for yourself where you are. Now, the CyberFundamental assessment tool is something which is evolving. And that's why I say, okay, check every time again that you use the last version. The versions are evolving because more and more entities are using it and they see, okay, there and there something has to be adapted, and we do that. We do an adaptation where it's necessary. What you see here is the introduction tab. And as a matter of fact, indeed, the CyberFundamentals self-assessment tool is an Excel workbook. Why, for God's sake, Excel? Well, as a matter of fact, we thought about it in the beginning and we thought eventually to put it on a web design, but then the companies told us, don't do that. We can use Excel because we recover the information that is in the self-assessment tool and we integrate it in our own tools. And it's very easy because it's Excel. So we can easily take out the information which is in the tool into our own system. So the self-assessment tool you see here is available for free on our website. You have there the two addresses, siphon.be or siphon.eu. There you will find a Siphon toolbox, and that toolbox contains the CyberFundamentals assessment tool. Let's go a little bit deeper. Now you have, and you see there every time again, on the top of your screen, that there are detailed steps. Detailed steps for basic, important, and essential. And you will have in the CyberFundamentals tool, self-assessment tool, you will see every time the same controls as, of course, you will see in the booklets that are downloadable. And then you have the possibility to make a score that varies from 1 to 5. That are maturity levels. Now, you see there a gray part, which is a blocked thing. So you cannot change anything about it. Those are automatic calculations. Calculations that are reused in the end report, the summary. So you will see that a big part of the CyberFundamentals self-assessment tool is protected. The reason, therefore, is because the CyberFundamentals framework is also a conformity assessment scheme under accreditation. The accreditation by BILAC, the Belgian National Accreditation Body. And that's also why we block, of course, the possibility to change things within this CyberFundamentals self-assessment tool. Before you can say, okay, my level, my cyber resilience is okay, you have certain thresholds in CyberFundamentals. We made the choice for those thresholds based on our experience. And you will see that those key measures play a quite important role. And when you go further in the framework, from basic to essential, you see that the requirements to pass are, of course, much more heavy. That's obvious. When you go further, your risk also increases. So you see there the thresholds. The thresholds are directly translated in the CyberFundamentals self-assessment tool, so you don't have to do anything. Everything is calculated automatically, and you will see automatically what the result is of your self-assessment. The summary tab, important tab. You cannot change anything on this specific tab. Everything is calculated automatically based on the thresholds that I explained to you earlier. And you will see that This step gives you a complete report of your self-assessment. Important is that this summary is also the input for conformity assessment by a third party. So you cannot change anything about this, and it is reused by the third party conformity assessment body to judge if the self-assessment that you did yourself is acceptable or not. The CyberFundamentals Framework was published for the first time to the public, the 1st March 2023. Now, since then, we started with those four booklets that you see there, and since then it evolved. You have the mapping that I told you about, that was originally in the booklets itself, but now it's available in an Excel. You have the Cyfun selection tool. So remember, this is the risk assessment at the highest level. Then you have the CyberFundamentals self-assessment tool that I also explained to you. And quite important, what we try to do is to give you as much information possible, meaning that we know that there are policies necessary to work out everything, and to avoid that you have to find out yourself how to write a policy, we did it for you. You can use our templates, you can change whatever you want in those templates, and you have as such directly the policy that you want. The CyberFundamentals framework is, like I said before, there is a conformity assessment scheme by third-party conformity assessment bodies that are working under accreditation. There is also a possibility to have a label, the CyberFundamentals labels. The CyberFundamentals framework, as you know, is based on NIST CSF 1.1. Now, of course, one of the most frequent questions we have is, what are you going to do? We have today NIST CSF 2.0. Well, we will come out with a new CyberFundamentals framework in the spring to 2025. This framework will be aligned with NIST CSF 2.0, and be aware this framework will be an evolution of the CyberFundamentals framework we use today. We don't throw everything away, of course not. There is, of course, a connection, continuity. But now we will include all the feedback we received from the field, from the users of the framework. We will include new threats based on the recent cyber incidents in Belgium, and we have the advantage to have a view on it day by day, because the Federal Cyber Emergency Response Team is a part of the CCB. And of course, we are going to include evolutions in the cybersecurity. That's something that will come spring 2025. That's all, folks. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We have an address, certification@ccb.belgium.be. Thank you for listening.